Okay, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, please put your headsets on because it allows you to listen. Thank you. Welcome to a side event, Navigating Uncharted Waters and Exploring Climate Peace and Security in Coastal Regions and SIDS. We are very happy to have you join us here for this important event hosted by the ODA Pavilion and organized by UN Development Program. We're very happy to be at the COP29 this year, and this is live streamed. And today is the thematic day on ocean and coastal zones. My name is Eri Yamasumi, and I'm from UNDP. I'm honored to guide you today's conversation. As we dive into this complex challenges of climate change, and communities in SIDS, small island development states, are in unique impact on peace and security that extends beyond land. So the Pacific, for instance, is home to 30,000 islands apparently, and it is more than 27% already less than 5 meters above sea level. So it is an existential threat for them. We will hear from today that there are frontline countries facing unique challenges and risks that requires urgent and innovative responses on this matter. But before we begin our panel discussion, we're very happy to introduce our keynote speaker, the UN Secretary General's Special Envoy for Ocean, Mr. Peter Thompson. He has been a champion for ocean health and resilience and has been advocating the intersections between climate, peace, and security in these ocean-related matters. Please join me in welcoming him into the stage.
Just to prove that I don't do things by WeChat, when I was listening to something in the event that I was just in now about the way everything is connected, it made me reminded me of my school days and the poet John Donne, 16th century poet from England. And he was the guy who wrote For Whom the Bell Tolls, for example. But he also wrote No Man is an Island. I think everybody has heard that expression, no man is an island. So what he actually said was, no man is an island, entire of itself. Every man is a piece of the continent, a part of the main. If a clod be washed away by the sea, Europe is less. Any man's death diminishes me because I'm involved in mankind. And I think that's a very eloquent phrase to show how, in fact, everything in life is connected. We understand that. I'm from Fiji in the Pacific Islands, and we understand in the ocean how everything is connected. But in fact, if you look at the planet, how are you going to separate atmosphere from what's happening on land with desertification, what's happening in the ocean with global warming? And so it's everything is so connected. So that's what, when John Donne wrote those words, he was 400 years ahead of his time in terms of what we're facing at the moment. I'm sure you've heard people say that you should not say oceans, plural, ocean, singular. We're all taught in school to be good boys and girls and name all the Mediterranean Sea and the Caribbean Sea and the Pacific Ocean, North Atlantic, etc. But what we weren't taught was that in fact it's only one ocean, and we should just talk about the ocean, and never the possessive. It's not our ocean, it is the ocean. It's an eternal thing. It's been there forever, will be there forever, long after humankind is gone. So it's the ocean. It's the dominant feature of our planet, in fact. So we have to give it the respect. It's where we come from, the ocean. That's where life began. We have to give it the respect like it's our mother. And we have not been respecting it. We've been overfishing it. We've been polluting it. We've been heating it up with our anthropogenic gases, which, of course, is the cause of all these problems which we're facing, not just death of coral, but rising sea levels. You heat the ocean, the water molecules are going to expand, and there's only way for it to go up, and that's up. So that's rising sea levels. but it's also that as the temperature gets warmer in the ocean, there comes a point where coral can't stand it. That's very bad news for us as a species. As I say, the ocean will carry on, but a hot ocean is bad for us because, as I say, it causes the death of coral. Coral is 25% of the biodiversity of the ocean is supported by coral. So how can you have a healthy ocean if you don't have coral? And coral is facing imminent extinction. How can you have a healthy ocean without it? I don't think you can. So you can't have a healthy planet without a healthy ocean. I mean, for example, 50% of the oxygen we breathe is produced in the ocean. You think of all the nutrition we get from the ocean, etc. So this is an existential matter for humankind because we don't have a healthy planet. How are we going to live on this planet? So it goes back to, follow the logic. What is causing the ocean to be warming? It's because the planet is warming. Why is the planet warming? It's because of our addiction to fossil fuels. We are burning coal, we're burning natural gas, and we're burning oil at a rate which is causing this acceleration of global heating, which is the cause of all those problems which I have just delineated. So, ladies and gentlemen, those of you watching on live stream, the basic challenge in all this is to break our addiction to fossil fuels. Stop burning fossil fuels. Go to renewable energy resources. We know that green energy is fast approaching a point where it's more economical to invest in renewable energy. Think of the falling prices of solar panels, for example. It's not just about us surviving on the planet. It's actually economically irrational to be investing in oil and gas with these renewable energy prices falling so rapidly. So everything is connected. I come back to that, and being from one of the SIDS myself, I want to acknowledge our brothers and sisters living in the coastal regions of the world, because yes, we face a terrible problem, not so much in a place like Fiji, where I come from, but if our neighbors, Tuvalu, we get 3 degrees, if we're still going at 3 degrees global warming, all of their land is covered. I was looking at a map here just down the corridor, what 3 degrees means to an island like Tongatapu, the main island of Tonga. At least 2/3 of it is gone. I looked at a map of Florida at 3 degrees global warming. The full southern half of Florida is gone. But then I turned to our friends in Bangladesh. They don't need 3 degrees. They're going to lose vast amounts of their living area at 2 degrees. And, there we're talking about hundreds of millions of people. So everything is connected. Don't imagine if you live on top of the ocean, on top of a mountain, that this is not going to affect you, right? It's going to affect everybody on this planet. And so we're all in this together. And we all know that, the effects of this will certainly challenge our ability to keep the peace on the planet. Because as people are being dispossessed from their traditional lands, where they're going to go? And if people try and stop them going to higher land, there's going to be trouble. So I think it's very timely that we address these things and understand the security issues involved in global warming. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Thompson. And the message is very clear that there is only one ocean, the ocean, that is connected to other parts of the planet, and that it's not only about the coastal regions and the SIDS, but it is actually for the others. And the fossil fuel message very strong. To stop burning them, to protect the ocean means to protect the planet. Very clear, and thank you so much for that strong opening. And building on these insights, we're now turning into this esteemed panel of experts. So I'm going to welcome everyone to the stage, please. Thank you. Okay, if you could. And I'm going to start by introducing one each and then ask a question each. We have Mr. Espen Romberg from Climate Change Advisor at the Pacific Community, the SPC, and he has 33 years of experience in climate change policy and sustainable development, key advocate for SIDS. So how in this experience do you see the interplay between climate change, peace and security evolving in the Pacific and other SIDS regions? May I ask you to...
Well, thank you very much. So, by way of introduction, my organization is a scientific and technical agency that works for the Pacific Island countries and territories. And we do a lot of work in a number of different sectors. And I'd like to just highlight one sector because of the potential for these challenges to cause severe unrest and fractions within the Pacific and globally as well. We have been studying the migratory patterns of tuna fish in the region because the tuna in the Pacific is the last sustainably managed tuna resource in the world. And we have a very effective management system in place. But what we have found is that climate change will cause a shift in the tuna migration away from where they are now. It's basically a northerly easterly shift. And what that will, the effect of that will be have multiple impacts. Currently, a number of countries in the region can get up to 20% of their GDP from fisheries, and they may lose that with the shift in the tuna stocks. There are also ancillary challenges arising. One of them is that there has been investment in the canning industry and in the transshipment industry, and if there is a shift to the east, there is no longer an incentive for the fishing companies to bring their catch to the established markets, again creating a loss of GDP. And there's another element to this. In the Marshall Islands, I'm on the Marshall Islands delegation, when the tuna boats come in, the best tuna gets flown out to the sashimi market. The second best is frozen and loined. The third best is sent to the tuna canneries. And the fourth best is sold off very cheaply to the local population, which is an enormously important source of protein and food. Now, if all of that is lost, so you lose income from the fisheries itself, you lose income from transshipment and servicing the tuna boats, you lose income from the canneries and the loining factories, and you lose that source of protein for the population. Where are those funds now going to be coming from? Where are people going to get their food when the source of protein is lost? And I can see this as a potential just for internal strife. But there's also what is going to happen to the fisheries itself. Right now, because of the very strong management that we have in place, we have the agreement of distant water fishing nations to abide by these rules. But if the fish stocks move outside of our EEZs, will they still maintain their adherence to that management regime? We also know that the tuna stocks themselves will be impacted by climate change in terms of the size of the fish and the amount of biomass created. So we might end up with a situation where climate change will cause the last sustainable fisheries in the world to be absolutely unsustainable going into the future. And this is a major source of potential conflict and strife for the Pacific Island countries as they lose income, as they lose food security, and as they lose control over a resource that they've been managing sustainably for so long. So I'd like to stop there and hand over. Thank you.
Thank you very much for this very specific and also very articulate example of what we see could actually happen in tomorrow. And I'm amazed about this the conflict dynamic that we don't usually hear in Pacific regions that could actually come from this economic instability and could come from trade, unfree trade and regulations that could actually affect free trade that could affect some of the competition to be very difficult for them to manage. Also the food security part. Already they are having the worst of the level of the fishery stock, and now they are even going to lose that. Is heartbreaking to hear. And also I understand totally if someone who is peaceful would actually think about a conflict that could happen. So thank you very much for sharing this most important, I think, issue that could that needs some kind of attention from the point of view that we could do act right now. Next we have Mr. Colono Artine Fabienne Fali, General Project Coordinator of the National Disaster Risk Management Authority from Madagascar. I know that you have 17 years of experience serving as a project coordinator of Madagascar's National Office for Risk and Disaster Management. Now, the country faces a unique set of challenges as also a SID, but in a different region, and particularly with security risk tied extreme weather events that we see more and more these days, rising sea levels as well, which can relate to disaster over marine resources. So from your experience in disaster and risk management, what are the most pressing challenges, and how does Madagascar integrate this disaster risk reduction and adaptation strategies into peace building and addressing them?
First of all, thank you for giving us the opportunity also to share the experience of Madagascar on that. National Disaster Risk Management Authority in Madagascar is a part of the Ministry of Interior and in charge of coordinating and implementing the national strategy of disaster risk management. It is led by our Lieutenant General Lelac Olivier, who is the Director General of this department. As far as your question is concerned, you know that Madagascar is very exposed. Even sometimes in some study or research, Madagascar is said that very vulnerable to extreme events like cyclone or water-related disaster. And every year, Madagascar is facing 1 to 3 cyclones. One of them is very severe one. The second one is about sea level rise. When it comes to talk about sea level rise, we also, as an island, even if Madagascar is the 4th biggest island in the world, it is still an island, and most part of our people lives next to sea, by the sea. So there is specifically 2 regions of Madagascar who is always taken as an example of those regions who is facing coastal erosion due to, and this coastal erosion in Morondava in the southwest of Madagascar, and then in Manakara in the southeast of Madagascar, they really are in danger because of coastal erosion and those due to sea level rise, but also due to those extreme events like cyclone that sometimes accelerate those coastal erosion when those region is hit by those cyclone. The third one is about the degradation of the ecosystem, maritime ecosystem. Of course, there is sometimes problem about the consequences of the ocean which is hit and the degree of the ocean sometimes provoke a kind of transformation of the habitability of those fish, and some of the community who is living about fisheries, they have to go far in deep in the ocean to see the normal fish that they get before. And it is not only the heat of the ocean, but it is also caused by the degradation of, the the, the land, the inland, and all those ground that is coming from the inland, it is now reversed to the sea, and it provokes a kind of problem also in the habitability of the fish, and then those communities were used to have their livelihood, and then to see and to look for fish next to their village. They have to go deeper to the sea to have a kind of income every day, and they risk their lives every day to because of that. And first and fourth, but not the least, maybe I would talk about food insecurity and water scarcity also. Those food insecurity is due to what I said, water-related disaster like drought, which really impact, because most of part of Madagascar people lives to agriculture, livestock, and fisheries. And when it comes to talk about rainfall restriction, it causes a kind of and drought. It causes a kind of diminution of crops, diminution of the productivity of those people who lives from agriculture. So those are the main impacts, I think, of those weather event. And sometimes it can have an impact in terms of the safety and security, because the people who used to have a kind of place where to have their livelihoods, they have to fight sometimes with other people to have also the same place of growing their crops, to have the same place of looking for fisheries, and it can be a kind of problem of neighborhoods of security. And facing to that, the government of Madagascar is not just looking at it. It has taken a very strong decision to fight against the problem. First of all, they put in place structure. The structure that is put in place, for example, is the Ministry of Blue Economy and Fishery. This is one of the testimony to say that the government is ready to fight against the problem. This is one of the. The second one is the put in place the National Disaster Risk Management Authority, also to support and to work all together about the problem. And all of the document of development document, those document about infrastructure, about sectorial documents, it mainstream disaster risk reduction in order to put in place standard, in order to put in place, for example, in Madagascar, we have put in place standard about household made by local materials. We have put in place standard about roads against floodings, etc., etc. And now we are about to put in place standard about telecommunication sector and energy sector. As department in charge of disaster risk management authority also, we put in place the early warning system for the local community in order to warn them about what might happen in the field if there is, for example, those extreme event that might come and that might hit their region. And for that, we involve them and we try to involve them to have the good behavior in face of those incoming disaster that might hit their region. But in addition to that, we also take advantage of all those World International Day to sensitize the local authorities, the communities about, for example, mangroves, the mangrove days, the World Forest Days, to always say that there is a reminding to be done to all the stakeholders that there is a danger here, and we also involve those people to replant mangroves in the coastal region in order to try to lessen the coastal region for that. The government also has put in place infrastructure like a seawall in Manakara, for example, and there is also kind of infrastructure put in place also in those two regions. But it is, I remember that one of the building I used to took photo at that place in Murundava 5 years ago. That building is now in the sea. It's not there anymore. So I really very conscious of this problem. That's why I accepted to very honored to be here with you. But there are some gaps. I can say that whatever the effort that we do, the problem that we have is the strength and the severity of the hazard. The strength of the severity of hazard might surprise everyone. Any kind of preparedness, any kind of risk reduction that you are going to put in place, it is sometimes not always enough. The second thing is the fundings. The fundings sometimes, whatever the mechanism of financial mechanism that the government has put in place. For example, we have put in place insurance, sovereign insurance. We have put in place also the National Contingency Fund, etc., etc., to suppose to help the local fishermen. We have put in place a specific early warning system for fishermen. We have really very proud of our Ministry of Blue Economy for that. They have very, very good information for fishermen. But sometimes it is not. It seems like it is not enough. The last example of Gamane last year, until 24 hours it hit Madagascar, it was not supposed to hit Madagascar. every forecast that has been sent to Madagascar by all those international and the national Met Service, they say it will not hit Madagascar up to 24 hours. And at the very last hour, it hit Madagascar. It changed its path to go to Madagascar. That's why I said the climate change might surprise everyone. So I think it's one of the end of my inputs here, but there are a lot to say about the topic. Thank you.
Thank you so much for this. And it's very clear that you have put in place the structure of Ministry of Blue Economy now with the disaster risk reduction type of already set in place. Standard for disaster proofing, these infrastructures and early warning systems and community advocacy, sea walls, and then even that might not be enough is a very strong message I received from you that sometimes there are limits to adaptation and sometimes we have to accept that we need to stop the cause instead of just responding to it. And thanks so much for sharing that with us. And now joining from Liberia is Mr. Tunzi Rodney Tan, Executive Director of Climate and Environmental Protection Initiative of Liberia and an advocate for environmental sustainability and education. You're also the chairman of the National Alliance for Climate and Environmental NGOs and a member of the EPA Policy Council. So with your background in community advocacy and leadership in environmental sustainability for the communities, what steps has Liberia taken to enhance the resilience of its coastal communities and resilience of these people while promoting peace and stability? Can you share a bit more?
Okay. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and also thanks to the previous speakers. And you can just see that issues about climate change knows no border. Similar cases as at it is in Madagascar, it's also being faced in Liberia. So, as you introduced me, talked about my organization. I'm speaking from the civil society perspective, not the government. Even though in recent years, like this year, we have a change of government, and there are several laws that have been on our books. We have a lot of laws in Africa and in Liberia. Liberia is of no exception, but those laws have not been followed. So according to our Ministry of Environment, called the Environmental Protection Agency, before we even appoint an executive director, or policy council should be set up, which comprises of several facets of the society, civil society, environmental NGOs, of which I represent, the youth group, the women group, and several other interagency coordination. So this has been made possible so that Liberia was able to adopt her national adaptation plan in 2020. That is for 10 years. So that is that plan runs from 2020 to 2030. We are now 4 years into the plan. There are a lot of efforts the government has been able to make, even though they have scarce resources. As you may know, most of these plans are ambitious. They require donor funding in order to be able to execute. Like take for instance the Green Climate Fund was able to fund mangrove restoration project in one of our coastal cities, Grand Cape May County. Liberia is a unique country on the west coast of Africa, and our political subdivision is divided into counties, and 9 of those counties are coastal counties. And then more than half of our population live within 40-mile radius of the ocean. So they depend on the ocean for livelihood, for land, for mineral extraction. And so you can imagine how much the ecosystem of the ocean is kind of depleted by these kind of activities. And most of those communities are slum communities. So those are people who do not have access to safe drinking water, proper sanitation practices, So most of the visits we do there, we realize that not even proper waste management service. So most of their waste are either placed in the waterways, in the mangrove ecosystem, or even in the water. So most of our water system are polluted, and this pose serious risk. And then we receive a huge intake of rain. We have two seasons, the rainy season and the dry season. Before then, when I was in elementary school, we learned that the rainy season used to start from June and end around late September, October, but it has since changed. This year, it started around April, and even up to the time we departed Liberia, there were still huge rains. And these days, when it rains, most communities get flooded. That even caused the death of children. And due to the sea level rise, most of our communities along the coast. So I'm going to specifically speak about three communities along the coast that my NGO worked with international partners to work in. We coined our project Kagana, which means climate adaptation gap analysis and needs assessments to know what are the needs of the people because they feel the brunt of climate change in their communities. And then we were able to realize a lot of striking news. There are several even mothers whose homes are affected by the heavy rainfall and the flooding going to their homes, like they have to even suspend their beds. Some of them die in the process. Even some of the kids die in the process. And because they don't have pipe-borne water in those communities, the water sources are depleted. And because also most of the young people in our community are apprentices to their parents who are either fishmongers or fishermen. And due to the high sea level rise, they don't have advanced boats to go into the deep sea, so they use their little canoes to go into the deep sea. There's a case recently, I'm talking about just less than 2 months ago when we're on this study, so it's just like maybe destiny that we have come here to talk about this. There was a case we were told by some of them that a fisherman went with his canoe in West Point on the ocean in deep sea, and then he got missing. He was found in an area called Maryland. Maryland is like Liberia coastline, our entire coastline, 350 miles long. And so Montserrat is around the center. So it means more than 200 miles away in the ocean from where he went. And there's also another case of a fisherman who was also found in Sierra Leone. And there are also cases of some of them who never even returned. So when you hear these kind of testimonies from them, and then we went there to do gap analysis in how well they respond to climate change issues, especially the high sea level rise. And most of them don't have any other source of income or livelihood except those water-related works. And then at the end of the day, they end up into sand mining, which compromise their own health and the safety of their environment. So there are several steps that the government has taken, but there are still more needs to be done. Through partners, another coastal county called Sano County, they were able to sign the Green Environmental Fund. The government of Liberia was able to sign with partners and UNDP World Bank sponsoring that particular program in Sano County, where over 80,000 people benefited, especially women and youth groups, in educating them, in working with them in their sea and adaptation efforts. So our people are resilient, but in their own ways, they are trying. But we still look forward to how much government can be able to source funding to be able to improve on some of those ambitious and initiatives that they have taken under the National Adaptation Plan. I will also be remiss if I don't outline the fact that as a civil society actor before then, as I told you, we just had a change of government. The previous government was not as friendly to us as the new one is. For the fact that I'm on the policy council representing all environmental CSOs, and even coming here as a party, and as a CSO, we also speak against most of the work we do to keep their feet to the fire. It shows the kind of synergy that is the kind of cordial relationship that we are, and that kind of coexistence that we have in order to propel this, because we cannot be combative. We have to be nationalistic in fighting this, because climate change is so alarming. And so before I close, a community called West Point during our Civil War in 1996. And we sought refuge there during the heat of the war, my family. And then there's an old national and government high school there. Behind the school, we had an entire community there. I'm talking about you walk almost 15 minutes behind the school. But right now, close to 2021, the community was wiped away. And in fact, the school was almost wiped away until one of our partners, and in line with the government, did this great infrastructure development to be able to block the ocean from carrying that school away. So our shores are being greatly reduced and depleted by the encroachment of the ocean into our lands. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much for this. Also, another powerful kind of highlighting that communities are at the center of resilience. It's not the government. It's not at the end of the day. It's the people who are actually needing to be resilient, and that civil society take a very strong leadership in this work, and also that the weather pattern changing, but also earlier we heard from Mr. Romberg about the fish stocks changing their patterns of their movement. These are related to not only the livelihood but also like the bigger economy for the government, and it's not just for the coastal communities to be aware of. I believe it does require some bigger policy changes in a global structure of how to think about how these coastal communities relate to the larger ecosystems of the world. And thanks so much for all the also very forefront kind of examples that you've given. And I know that the audience is a little bit limited right now, and I think the question if anyone has any question, please do let us know. I'm happy to take them. But I have actually wanted to ask a bit more into this conversation, dig a bit more into where can we start as global citizen if a community could do something about one thing, where can we start? Because I think there's a lot of issues that we've picked up on: disaster risk management, the coastal erosion, the sea level rise, and everything. I wanted to know a bit more about your priorities. Where do you think we should really first of all focus on? Is it the finance to the communities? Is it more about the politics that we need to manage? If there's any advice to the community here that you can give. And I'm happy do you want to start?
Thank you. Like Ambassador Thompson said, ultimately the solution lies in massive global reductions in emissions. But if you look at what's actually needed in countries like in the Pacific, for example, it's really about meaningful access to the means of implementation. We are not so much concerned about increasing the overall quantum of financing, because at present the Pacific is only accessing about 0.22% of the global promise of 100 billion. And this is because the system has got so many structural flaws. It is basically a one-size-fits-all system, and that does not work for small countries with small administrations with a lack of capacity. We need to be a lot more granular in how we approach financing of climate change action, not just for the Pacific small island state, but for all countries. All countries require a much more targeted approach. For us, there's limitations that are structural. One is that we have limited capacity to begin with, and there are restrictions to international finance. For example, that you can only have so much management costs. That means that we have to rely on our existing bureaucracy to do, for example, reporting and so forth. We might be able to hire the best possible project manager who knows exactly what needs to be done, whether it's a water project or a fisheries project or an energy project. But that person may not have the skills to write up these massive reports and the financial auditing and all of that, and has to rely on an already overburdened civil service to do that for them. A second issue that we face is because the Pacific Islands are so remote and far away, we have extra transportation costs. It's one thing to bring equipment and personnel to the capital island, but if you have to go to the far remote areas, remote islands, that adds cost as well. Then there's issues surrounding the size of our population. Some of our funding institutions, they look at certain metrics when they're looking at success. So for example, how many tons of carbon are you reducing per dollar, and how many people are you making resilient per dollar, as opposed to metrics that would really be more fitting for us, and that is, for example, the percentage of the population that is fully served by modern renewable energy, or the percentage of the population that is made resilient. We don't have that sort of discussions when it comes to financing. And then there's also issues relating to appropriate technologies. A lot of the times the modern technology development is happening for larger countries, for industrialized countries, and it's not necessarily fit for purpose when it is brought down to the level of the Pacific. And so we would rather like to see technology being developed for smaller communities, which would be suitable for us in the islands, but would be also suitable for small communities in other countries like Liberia. Coastal communities in Liberia could probably benefit from similar sort of approaches that we do in the islands, and same with Madagascar. I know that the reliance and the interconnectedness between coastal communities and the ocean is very similar across the world, but we don't get that sort of support. So my bottom line is we need to be much more targeted in technology, capacity building and financing, and also more flexible in how financing is to be accessed and to be utilized by the countries, because at the end of the day, it has to be utilized for the benefit of the communities and not just to tick a box. Thank you.
Yeah, okay. Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, absolutely. So we were talking about what would you want to prioritize for in this matter for the global community to take a look.
Okay, okay. So, as a civil society actor, and from Africa, especially where in most cases our government don't have the political will, and in most cases before then we had to be in a little bit of compatible mode with them to be able to implement most of these projects. Our own approach is community driven. Like the project I was telling you about, the climate adaptation gap, the gap analysis and needs assessment, we're able to. It is that particular project that that project has more than 5 different phases, and at the end of that project, whilst understanding and the first phase is to understand their knowledge and how well they understand issue about climate change, and then what are some of the adaptation strategies that they put in on a local and community level, and then what are some of the other issues surrounding them. Then besides that, at the end of the day, we give them tests. So somebody will say, okay, I understand something about climate change, and then we kind of tailor the question in such a way that we ask you that one question in 4 different ways, and if you don't, what you are saying, if you don't really understand, I think we're going to know. And then from there, we'll do a training. We have now conducted the training. After the training, Then the community will be able to, based on the training, the community will be able to tell us the project that they want. Like, say for instance, most of the fishmongers, when the fishermen bring the fish, they have to auction it because they had no means of storage. So we had to understand from one of our previous projects we did with them, so that the donor were able to get a huge fridge, like a cold storage, powered by solar, and then they can be able to continue their businesses even when there's no means of the fishermen going on the ocean. So you cannot get the government going into those kind of area like that to understand those kind of things. The government may do like the Monserrato and Metropolitan Project, where they try in the restoration of the mangrove or protection of the mangrove, even though some communities are not well educated enough, and at the end of the day they are depleting the mangroves. The government may also try in several other international, with some of the international partners, to do some interventions, but at the community level, when those projects are being felt by the community, and at the end of the day, not just going there to say, oh, we want to do this for you. You have to have them involved. Like what we're talking.
I think everything has already been said. They're very interesting insights from the previous speaker. One thing that I would like just to start with is one note from the keynote speaker, who said that every human is a part of a whole continent. We are a piece of a whole continent, and there is only one ocean. I think it is something we can start with by saying that we need global, of course, support, global technology, global finance, global, I don't know, global experts, etc., etc. But at the same time, let's not forget that we as developing country, we didn't wait for you, for developing countries, to live our own lives. And even we as a national level authorities, the very far away countries in my country, in a remote area, those people didn't wait for us, wait for my department to come and to talk to them to see, to cope with disaster they faced. So let's not forget that. It's not person that will come and they say, I am going to teach you something. No, let's also teach from them. Let's also hear what are the coping adaptation that they have been doing. And let's see what are the things that added value from technology, from research. And let's not avoid that one of the pillars of having things work in the field is ownership. If the people, whatever the level you are talking about, there is no ownership of the targeted community, it will never work. You will always come doing workshop, having post cafe, and offering lunch and so on. But at the end of the workshop, the people will go away and go in at home, and they will never mainstream what you are, what message you wish. Why do I say that? I'm thinking about more integrated thing, and I really like. I don't remember who was talk about this, but he say, think globally, but act locally. Huh? This is the main thing that we should do. Those financing, there are a lot of things, a lot of research, a lot of that has already been done everywhere in the world. We all know are repeating nearly the same thing in some result of studies, result of research, and so on and so forth. But how can we now make a priority to really take advantage of reinforcing what is already existing in the field? It's better than bringing new things. Of course, you can bring new things. In Madagascar, for example, as the colleague from researchers said, we are a big project for World Bank, and we are going to distribute technology like smartphone and so on all over Madagascar. And the idea is to target some local authorities and local and to give them the technology to to have this information sharing. How can then we train them to have a risk-informed decision-making process? And it might be very useful not only to cope with disaster risks, but at the same time, adaptation also, because there, when you build something, you build policy, development, local development plan with statistics and risk-informed development plan, it's very, very useful, and it's bring an added value. And last but not least, I think there is, for example, the tradition that has always make the cohesion of the community. We are now investing a lot in social cohesion activities to avoid insecurity, to avoid that people steal the livestock or steal the agriculture of those communities and so on and so forth. In order to make sure, and we have put in place and reinforcing what we call DINA. DINA in Madagascar, it's a kind of local-led justice. And it is under the umbrella of Ministry of Justice, but it is led by the community. How can we then invest on those kind of existing things in order to make sure? And the bureaucracy, as the colleague says, there are a lot of funding that is spent on management and so on and so forth, but just a part of those fundings can bring a lot of things at a local level.
Thank you so much. And if anyone has any further question, do please hands up and let me know. But I did take a lot of notes actually, and this is because for climate peace and security, and I personally am a policy specialist on this work. We don't get to actually understand further in the community level what is needed, and this is very, very helpful for us, because now I know that investing preventive and responsive kind of development approach to these communities could actually respond to a larger global security and peace building. And the uniqueness of the targeted communities and these coastal regions and SIDS are very specific. I understand now that there is need for capacity building. And this is not only for the government workers, but also for the communities that are needing to get and mobilize for these kind of calls, whether it be the work related to appropriate technology that actually respond to these communities, but also the financing. They need to be the ones to be able to access them, and to understand that whether this is a success or not is also depending on the metrics that we come up with, and these metrics really need to respond to these realities, whether it be in the percentage of population or whether it be in an actual resilience that we see. And it's all about thinking globally, but actually acting locally is what I understood from everyone, that the approach that you from Liberia, we heard that civil society can kind of be the ones to mobilize these support, and when they're trained and educated, they could be a big force in this work. And also, just to learn and understand what the coping mechanisms are, adaptation methods are that already exist in these communities. Learn from them, not from us to them, but actually learn from them what they actually need is what I kind of understood through this conversation. And thank you so much for all this brilliant input for our work actually as well. And as a UN Development Program, we do look at this as a very global issue, but also we understand this is very, very context specific when it comes to approaches that we have to respond. So this really helps us, and thank you very much for this brilliant conversation today. Thank you.